Hello, in this video, we will learn how to do any character pattern in Java. Now when you search the internet, there are so many video playlists with 40 plus videos or lengthy blogs on these programs. So do you need to learn all of them? Answer is no. You need to learn a few tricks and you can solve most of the character pattern program on your own. If you go through this video, you will be able to make any of these patterns shown and many more. When you are solving character pattern program, you will notice there are actually two things which make the pattern. One is the pattern or shape and second is the character which are there inside the pattern. Like over here, the characters are the same but they are in different pattern. Or here the pattern is same but each of the triangle have different characters. So like I explained in number programming, first thing you need to remember is that you should not mix the code for these two. Means your program will have two separate logic, one to make the pattern and other to put in the character as per the question. So let's get started. First thing we need to learn is pattern. It is the shape which contains the characters. As we just saw, the question can ask you the same character in different shape. So first thing you need to know is how to form that shape with a basic star. If you have not watched my video to create any star pattern program, you need to pause, click on the link given and watch the video and then return. It is very important that you first know how to create the shape with just star, as we are going to just reuse that code here and adding the character part. I am giving you a quick summary of my star pattern video here. What we learnt is that you can make complex shapes by learning to code only two basic shapes, increasing triangle and decreasing triangle. Let's see the code for both of them. Increasing triangle has outer loop from 1 to n and inner loop from 1 to I. Decreasing triangle have outer loop from 1 to n and inner loop from I to n. Inside the inner loop, we have the print statement to print the star and the last statement of the outer loop is a println statement which takes you to next line after a complete row is printed. You need to remember these two pattern code. Any complex pattern is just broken down to these basic triangles and then just clubbed together in sequence as they appear. For example, here we have first triangle with decreasing space and second triangle with increasing star, so we will write two inner loop like this. If it is a hill pattern, there is another decreasing triangle, so we will put another inner loop. To ensure we have pointed edges, we will have one of the loops print one less column. This code will give us output like this. So when you are given a character pattern, I will assume you do know how to create the shape with star and we are going to just reuse that code to build our character pattern program. Now let's see how we will handle character pattern program. Let's start easy with a single character pattern. Suppose if it was pattern of just A's. When you solve pattern program with character, you will break your problem into two parts. First, what is the pattern? And second, what are the characters in it? You will first look at the shape and write the code which is required for that shape. As you see, this is increasing triangle pattern program. We will first get the star pattern program for increasing triangle which we had learnt in the star pattern video. So this program solves the first part of creating the pattern. Now we will come to characters. We see that this has constant same character in the pattern. So only change you need to do here is instead of star, print character A which is there and you are ready with the pattern code. Now you do know different pattern programs from my star pattern program video. This effectively means that in any of those, if you replace star with A in print statement, you can have varied pattern shapes with A. Now this was too easy. Let's see something more closer to what is actually asked in the exam. Let's take a closer look at this pattern. Again, to solve this, we will break it into two parts, pattern and characters. You know this is incrementing triangle pattern, so you can immediately recall the code which displays incrementing triangle with star. Incrementing triangle has outer loop from 1 to n and inner loop from 1 to I. Now that we have the pattern sorted, we will focus on the character. What we see is that the character starts with A and is incremented by 1 in each row. So we need A to be printed in row 1, B to be printed in second row, C in third, and so on. Now which of our loop manages the rows? It is the outer loop. What we will do is use another value P in the outer loop and initialize it to the first value that is expected. Here it is A, so either you can put in the character A or you can put its ASCII code 65. Both would work. In the increment section, we will increment it every time it goes to the next row. Inside the inner loop, we will print this variable P, but we will typecast it into char first, otherwise it will print its ASCII value. If you want it to be evenly spaced, add a space 2 to it. Now when you run it, it will give an output like this. The same logic we can use for any shape which has same character in each row, like for the right-sided triangle or hill pattern or any other pattern. Now what if the value was E first and then D, then C and then B and then A? Again we see in a row the same character is printed, so we will set P to the initial value E and decrement the value every time. In the inner loop, we will print P typecasted to char. This will again work for all different patterns with decreasing row character pattern. Let's take some different pattern this time. Now in this first row starts with A and then next row is C and then E and G and I. Here again we will take the shape pattern program and then we will set initial value of P to A and then increment it by 2. In print statement, we will print P typecasted to char. Now let's go a little more complex. What if pattern was like this? Now here there is no set increment or decrement value, but it is just two values which are alternating. It could be numbers, patterns or characters. So how do we handle this? Let's pick one of them and study it closely. Now we do know how to write a star pattern program for this pattern. Now in this pattern, in row 1, 3, 5, I want A and in row 2 and 4, I want B. So what it is saying is that for odd rows, print A and for even rows, print B. So what we need to do in such scenarios is just add a if-else around the print statement. What we will say is if I is even means if I%2 equal to 0, then print B, otherwise print A. With just this change, you have your code ready. Now what if the pattern was like this? Again take the code you have for the pattern first. Here in even rows, we have 0, so we will have the if statement printing 0, else it will print Z. Now how does this work in bigger pattern like diamond or butterfly pattern? Let's take diamond pattern as example. Here we have our star pattern code for diamond. Here instead of star, the expectation is to print increasing characters in row. Now we have two outer loops here. Can you just in both loop write P starting from A, do plus plus and just replace star with printing P typecasted to char? If you run this, your pattern will show up like this. Till D it was fine, but then it again started from A. The lower loop was supposed to increment and use previous P and not take a new P. So how will we fix this? We know we cannot declare P again in second loop. We need to use one P for both of the outer loops. So what we will do is move the initialization of P outside of the for loop so that it is available to both loops. The increment will stay as is, as we need P to increment after each row. What if the pattern was like this? It is increasing and then decreasing. Here we will again take our star pattern code for diamond, which builds the shape for us. I am printing them in two columns so that you can see complete code in one screen. Now first we have increasing character pattern. So what we are going to do is that in first loop we will set P to A and increment it. Inside we will replace all print star with print P typecasted to char. Now in the second loop we have decreasing characters. So in the below pattern we will set P is equal to E and decrement it every time. Inside the loop we will replace print star with print P typecasted to char everywhere. This is our code for increasing and decreasing character patterns. You can try alternate characters, skipping characters, and try playing around with double row patterns. Now all this was where character in a row were constant. What if there was a change in characters in column? Let's see these patterns now. Now we do know that the column printing is managed by our inner loop. What we see in all of these patterns is that all rows start with A and then increment by 1 till end of the row. Let's take one of these as examples. Here we have the code for increasing triangle star pattern. So when column gets incremented, instead of outer loop, we will take the additional variable in inner loop. Moment we enter the outer loop, we will initialize our variable P to A and increment it. We will print P++ typecasted to char instead of star. Now let's see how it will work. It will start with row 1 and I gets initialized to 1 moment we enter the outer loop. Then it enters the inner loop and P is initialized to A and it prints P. However, the loop executes only one time for the first row, so the println statement is executed and row is incremented to 2. It will enter inner for loop and initialize P to A again. It will print P, which is A. P is incremented and then in second pass of inner loop, it prints B. Then it comes out and in row 3, it prints ABC. In row 4, it prints ABCD and in row 5, it prints ABCDE. Important point to note over here is that P is initialized to A every time moment you enter inside the first loop. This cannot be done outside the loop as the loop is executed multiple times and every time you enter a new row, it needs to be initialized back to A. Second thing is, we need to increment P every time it is printed so that in the next print statement, it has the incremented character. Now how does it work for this pattern? Here again, we will get our code for this pattern. We will initialize P to A the moment we enter inside loop. There is no change in the loop for space. We go to the loop which prints star and instead of star, we will print P++ typecasted to char. Now how does it work for hill pattern? Again exactly similar. We initialize P to A as first line inside the outer loop and then just replace star with P++ typecasted to char. This is the code for the hill pattern. It will work the same for any double row pattern too, like diamond or butterfly. Now what if it was decreasing pattern? Here let's see two variations of the pattern. One is where it is reducing but starting character is same. Other is where ending character is same, like this one. How will you handle these two? Now when the starting character is same, it is very easy and similar to what I have shown in the incrementing pattern. You will just set P to starting character, which is E in this pattern, and then replace all star with P minus minus typecasted to char. This logic will work for all pattern shapes. But how to handle when start value is different? Means every time you need to initialize P with different character. It should be E in first row, D in second row, then C, then B, and then A. The print statement will still remain the same, P minus minus. How do I give it varying values? Here I will initialize another variable in outer loop and start with E and reduce it by 1 every time. I will use it to initialize P every time. Why am I not using this variable only instead of P? Because I am decrementing P in the inner loop. After the first pass itself, P will reduce to A and we will not be able to set it back to D then. What if the pattern was a hill pattern like this? You just learned how to do increasing character and decreasing character with variable starting characters. We will first get our standard program for hill pattern using star. Now after printing space, first triangle is incrementing character starting with A. So we will initialize a variable P to A and print P++ typecasted to char. In the next loop, you are actually just decrementing the same P, so we will just do P minus minus. This should give us the required pattern. Now many times a word is given to you and you are asked to form a pattern with that specific word. Let's say the word is coder. Now again here, the pattern shape that could be asked could be any of these. But if you see, all of them have same alphabet in each row. Let's pick up this pattern and see how we can solve it. Now in these programs, first we will initialize a string with the given word outside the loop. Next we need to set end to length of your pattern. Important thing you need to remember is that in string, index starts from 0. Second is that we will use the string caret function, which takes in an index to access individual characters. So if we give caret 0, it will give character at 0 index and then 1 and then 2 and so on. Let's see how we will use it in our program. Now this program is incrementing triangle pattern. So first we will get in a standard star program for increasing triangle. Now what we see is that in row 1 we have to print character at 0 index, in row 2 character at first index and so on. So again, which loop manages the rows? It is the outer loop. So what we will do is use another variable P in outer loop and set the index of first character, which is 0. In increment section, we will just increment it every time it goes to the next row. Now in print statement, we will just use caret P to access the character at that index. So here for the first row, when P is 0, it will print C for us. For second row, when P is 1, it will print O and then D and then E and then R. This is our program for same character in each row. The same logic we can use for any shape which has the same character in each row, like for the right-sided triangle or hill pattern or any other pattern. But what if the values were reversed? Again we see in a row the same character is printed, so we will just set P to the last index, which is 4, and we will decrement it every time and we will get the pattern. This will again work for all different patterns with decreasing row character patterns. Now all this was where characters in a row were constant. What if there was change in characters in columns? Let's see these patterns now. Now we do know that the column printing is managed by our inner loop. What we see in all of these patterns is All rows start with character at 0 index and then index increments by 1 till end of row. Now take one of these as example. Here we have the code for increasing start pattern where we have initialized the string outside the loop. So when columns get incremented, instead of outer loop, we will take the additional variable in inner loop. Moment we enter in the outer loop, we will initialize our variable p to 0. Our print statement will use the same char at p++ to get the characters at given index. This will again work for all different patterns where columns are incrementing. Now what if it was a decreasing pattern? Here let's see two variations of the pattern. One is where it is reducing but starting character or index is the same. Other is where ending character or index is same like this one. How will you handle these two? Now the starting character same is very easy and similar to what I showed in incrementing pattern. You will just set p to starting index, which is 4 in this pattern, and then replace star with s.char at p-. This logic will work for all pattern shapes. But how to handle when start value is different? Means every time you need to initialize p with different character index. It should be R in first row, E in second row, then D, then 0 and then C. The print statement will still remain the same, char at p-. How do I give it varying values? Here I will initialize another variable in outer loop and start with 4 and reduce it by 1 every time. I will use it to initialize p every time. The logic is same as that we used earlier. You can now try any pattern shapes combined with character. If you have any doubt, do reach out to us at simplycoding.in. Thank you and goodbye.